Welcome back to another episode of The Communicative Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Leah O. We often talk about leadership in terms of strategy, metrics, and bottom lines. But at its core, leadership is a human endeavor. It's about shepherding people toward a shared vision and creating an environment where they can truly thrive. Bishop Kevin Foreman argues that true leadership communication is about establishing shalom, a state where nothing is missing, nothing is lacking, and nothing is broken. In many organizations, we see the opposite: broken communication, lacking trust, missing clarity. To fix these organizational headaches, we have to move past superficial boundaries and engage in the kind of bold, practical, and honest dialogue that transforms lives and cultures. Today's guest is a true Renaissance man who has mastered the art of leading across diverse landscapes. From planting a thriving multi-generational church in a church planter's graveyard to coaching high-level executives and entrepreneurs, Bishop Kevin Foreman is a renowned pastor, success coach, and author of 5 books, including The Evolutionaries and Making Money Moves. Known as the People's Bishop, he has a unique ability to take complex, often taboo subjects and make them approachable for audiences of all pedigrees. In today's episode, we're diving into how to lead with shalom, the communication shifts required to break generational organizational curses, and how to build a culture of holistic success from the ground up. Let's dive in and have some fun. Hello and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million-Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. So, Bishop, I'm so glad you're here. You're joining us today. And, your bio, you do it all. You're a multidimensional man, a pastor, an entrepreneur, a success coach. So I love this because I think so much of the messaging for leaders today is stay in your lane. And that's what you need to do to be effective. Yeah. But you are leading across sectors and using different languages. And as a leadership communication scholar, I love this. And I'm wondering, how do you take all of these strengths that you have, these identities, and put them into one cohesive leadership voice?
Oh my God, I love what you said. And I agree with you. A lot of times, to stay in your lane, just do this, focus on this, lock in on this. I think that robs us of the humanity of what we're doing because there's so many aspects. That's like, I look at like a butter knife. And, everybody, I think at one point or another has had a door locked in your home or something. And that butter knife took on another role as the door opener, which took on another role when you were dealing with a flathead screw or something as a screwdriver. That one thing, although it had the intended, but the purpose of it or what it was intended and created to do, it's able to do other things and it can in fact do those things well. Now, I use that analogy because sometimes people think, well, I can only deal with butter and that's it. And the reality is there's so many other things. And so for me, I had to adapt both and lifestyle approach versus an either or. The either or is so limiting. I think the challenge that many people have is like, how can everything get my focus? And I think the reality is everything won't get the same amount of focus, but everything doesn't need the same amount of focus. There's certain things that when you set them in motion, they are able to run, they're able to flow, and you build systems, you build structures, you use strategy in order to set some of those things up. So does every day get 100% focus of me and all of the different things that I do? Absolutely not. But you know what does? Me. And because all of these things involve me, I am able to output 100% or, as much as I can, always trying to get better of who I am into everything that I do. And for me, creating this cohesive thing was just about being myself because it's very difficult to have to get in character to go do something else. Get in character to go do something else.
Yep, exactly.
So I just am who I am and I do these different things. And to me, that has been just the most effective way for me to express all of the gifts, the talents, the skills, the abilities, and not lock myself into a box because somebody said that that's what I should do.
Yeah. And I love that too, because then it doesn't feel performative when you're showing up as yourself in all of these different arenas. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So,
think too, when you mentioned the performative piece,
hmm
it's for many
yeah.
people, it feels that way because
hmm
using that analogy, like, I'm doing this. So I used to do a lot
hmm
of traditional
hmm
TV and tradition. Of course, now everybody's podcasting and home studios
Yep.
and all that. But back in the traditional TV days, this wasn't that long
hmm
ago, you go and sit in the makeup room and have the
hmm
makeup artist. They get the oil
Yep.
off your forehead.
Yep.
They get you ready for the lights. They sit there. They're doing checks and all of that.
hmm
And so what happens is it's like, okay, boom, lights, camera, action, I'm on.
hmm
And that's not who you were on off camera. So it
Yep.
feels like you're putting out a lot of
hmm
energy because you're not being authentically you in every space and
Yeah.
place that you show up. And so that does feel performative and that can feel draining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, a follow up for that, you have a philosophy of shalom. And I'm
Yes.
wondering how that informs the way you maybe speak to a CEO differently or maybe even similarly to the
Yeah.
way you do your congregation.
Great question. So that shalom is it's a Hebrew word. It
Mm-hmm.
means peace, but it
Mm-hmm.
means it's a bit more than peace. It actually means
Mm-hmm.
nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking, all
Mm-hmm.
is well. It's
Okay.
often the word that's used in scripture for prosperity. So a lot of times people think
Mm-hmm.
prosperity, they just think money. Money is a
Mm-hmm.
form of prosperity, but it's the lowest form of
Mm-hmm.
prosperity because it's a tool, it's a
Mm-hmm.
resource. It's like saying I
Mm-hmm.
have a million tools to do something versus
Yep.
the thing that I did with those tools or what have you. So
Mm-hmm.
and in that, for me, I generally approach every conversation results oriented. So as a leader, as a pastor, everything is
Mm-hmm.
results oriented. Everything I teach, every counseling session is a coach of very successful individuals who, we go through the process many times. For example, if it's business coaching,
Mm-hmm.
taking them from Genesis to, I love seeing my students that one of my students
Mm-hmm.
has crossed the $8 million mark. And which
Wow.
was such a journey because when he came here
Yeah.
2 years ago, he was at a 500,000 in 3 years. We've gotten him up to that.
Yeah. Wow.
So I have the same type of conversation, results
Mm-hmm.
oriented. Some people like to talk for the sake of talking. They
Mm-hmm.
like to ideate for the sake of ideating. For
Mm-hmm.
me, that shalom word, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking, all is well, means let's get some results. Let's have
Mm-hmm.
something to show for what it is that we're
Mm,
doing. So it literally bleeds into everything that I do. I mean, down to
mhm.
friendships. My
Yeah.
friendships are the exact same way. When we're on the
Yep.
phone, you have human moments. And so I may be
Yeah.
having a human moment and they'll throw it back right back and they'll say, okay, so now what
Mhm.
are we going to do about it? And vice versa. They may be having a human moment. Bishop is this,
Yeah.
is this, is this,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this, is this, is this. And then that
Yep.
turns into, okay, great. Now, all right, now we've whined about it.
Yep.
Now what are we going to do about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. I love that action-oriented approach, and, you're not gonna get stuck, right? Or not
Right,
for very
exactly.
long.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I think that's the key.
Mhm.
Keeping it moving. That's one of my life's mantras. Keep it
Yeah.
moving. Keep it moving.
Yep.
It becomes difficult to hit a
Exactly.
target that's always moving.
Exactly. And so now I wanna talk about harvest, and
Yes.
you founded this church in a region often called the church planter's graveyard,
That's what
and
they
you didn't
call it.
have yeah, financial benefactor. So you literally turn nothing into something so significant. So when a leader is trying to kind of present a vision or culture shift with
Mhm.
zero initial buy-in, from your experience, what's the first thing they need to change about their way they're speaking to their stakeholders to move them from skeptics to believers?
Yes. I think first of all, it is having a clear idea on where you want to go and realizing
Mhm.
that that clear idea is going to change. I think many
Mhm.
people never ever start that conversation because
Yeah.
they want perfection instead of progress. And
Yep.
so something that is a good plan that's executed is better than a
Mhm.
perfect plan that is
Yep.
only talked about. And so it's about, again, the action. So, for example, I
Mhm.
can remember the day we held our first interest meeting. It was in the clubhouse of
Mhm.
where my condo was. And
Mhm.
we gathered a bunch of people. And I said, this is what I want to do. The initial vision was something
Mhm.
very, very different than what it is today.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I started, right? And so we
Yep.
gather all these people, we talk about what we want to do, we feed
Mhm.
them. People are a little bit
Yep.
more malleable if you feed them
Oh, yeah.
and, and you give them, if you encourage, give
Yep.
them something. People
Yep.
generally, when you give people something, they feel almost this level of
Mhm.
indebtedness to at least hear
Yep.
you or at least to
Mm.
receive from you. And so we did that. I got up, presented this meeting. It was amazing. It was very well attended. In fact, we had overflow. And so I presented something and then we executed on
Yeah.
what we presented. What I did was the best thing to answer your question is one, I
Mhm.
remained consistent. People knew
Mhm.
that even if where we were going changed, they knew that I was still going to be at the front.
Yep.
They knew that I was still going to be there. They knew they could depend on me. And that's become one of these staples of my brand, if you will, is that consistency. Like, if Bishop Foreman says it's going to happen, it's
Yep.
going to
Yep.
happen.
Yep.
He may not do it the way he said he originally was going to do it, right? It had
Yeah.
to change because we're
Yep.
married to results,
Yeah.
not the vehicle. Second thing that I would say that really taking people, and I love how you said it, from skeptics to believers, is also then showing people, look at what we're doing. So one of the things we
Yep.
often do is this thing called harvest at a glance, and we show all of what we've done, right? Because you've got people who
Okay.
are serving or
Yeah.
volunteering, as most would say. You have people who are giving and contributing to what we do. You have people who are, participating in what we do in a variety of different
Yep.
ways. So here's what we've done. So I make it a point, and I did back then, I did it now, to do it now rather, to make a point. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we've done. You'd be amazed at how people, when they know that what they're doing is making a difference, they'll
Yep.
do it with a greater level of intensity, even in a volunteer space,
Yeah.
even more so than they would in just be, a staffer or executive or whatever it might be. One of my movies that I love to watch is Godfather. And I forget which one it is. And I never watched it. My cousin said, "Bishop, you got to watch The Godfather." I said,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I said, "These are long movies." And so
Yeah.
we look at one of them, and he makes this statement. He says, which group, there's like a war going on, and there's got the
Okay.
rebels and I think like in Cuba or something, government, I forget exactly the specifics. And he said, "Who's going to win this war?" They said the rebels are, because they're doing it and they're not getting paid. And the point is that they
Yep.
had something bigger than money as their motivator. It was
Yep.
purpose. And when you
Yep.
constantly give people purpose, it's a bigger
Yep.
motivator than I think
Yep.
pecuniary, rewards and even financial rewards. Which is why
Yeah.
you see so many people that'll work and have a side hustle, work and have another business, work and do this, because this gives
Yep.
them purpose, even if this gives them, compensation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too that I love that you showcase, thinking of purpose, the different ways that people serve and give and show
Mhm.
up, because I think some people get stuck thinking there's only one way to do it or there's one right way to do it. And then that is like, nope, it takes all of us.
Yes, it does. And I think too,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, showing everybody that their contribution
Yep.
is important, whether they may
Mm-hmm.
see it or not. I think is so essential to
Mm-hmm.
building anything of success and anything great, because at the end of the day, that really is just a much more efficacious motivator to get
Mm-hmm.
people to move than just money. And let's prove it. Even you can make someone an offer and offer them more money than they've ever made, and they'll still be on the fence
Yep.
about it, because they'll
Yep.
say, "Well, but the work is not purposeful to me. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's not doing more than just giving me a check." So money
Yeah.
alone is a poor motivator.
Exactly. And so let's talk about breaking generational curses now. And
Yes.
something I love that you've written about. From my perspective in my work, I see organizational curses, right?
Yeah.
These toxic, this is, we've always done it this way kind of scripts that keep organizations and teams stuck.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, how can a leader use communication to kind of get rid of that old stagnant company narrative or a personal narrative and
Mhm.
replace it with a new story that people really believe in, they want to be a part of?
So good. Let's
Mhm.
define a curse. So
Mhm.
I think it's difficult to mind a thing if you don't first define the
Mhm.
thing. Define the
Yep.
thing. And so a curse, I would generically say, a lot of people hear that and they go, well, witches and ghosts
Yeah.
and goblins and
Mhm.
demons and things like
Yep.
that. Curse is
Mhm.
just a
Mhm.
dysfunctional, destructive pattern of behavior, right? It ends in
Mhm.
failure. And so, you can even look at Greek mythology, where it talked about Sisyphus, how he would roll the boulder up the hill and it would go
Mhm.
back down, roll it
Yeah.
up and we're going down. That's a curse. Like, you were doing the same thing over and over
Yeah.
again and expecting a different result. It's a curse,
Yep.
that in the curse of insanity. I
Yep.
think organizationally, there are things that we consistently do, and individually, things that we consistently do that aren't
Mhm.
producing results. And then we have to ask ourselves the question, why do we do it? And often it's
Yep.
because, one, it's institutional. We've always done it this way. Well,
Yep.
nobody ever stopped to say, let's do it different. Let's view it
Yep.
different. And the truth is, most people don't.
Mhm.
There's a million ways to simplify things and to
Yep.
make things better and more efficient. Most times, no one ever asks the question. Number two,
Mhm.
and not only institutional, number two, a lot of it is in our individual makeup, how we were
Mhm.
formed as individuals, how we are as
Yep.
individuals. The joke is, I came into my mom's room with a Bible and a briefcase.
Yeah.
So I had this spiritual side,
Yeah.
I have this business side, and I've always been
Mhm.
that way. So I
Yep.
never saw those two things as conflicting. I saw them as
Yeah.
converging.
Yep.
And so for me, I can bring the two together. So I can talk faith and finances.
Mhm.
And a lot of people say, oh, no,
Yep.
you can't put those together. No, to me, no. Put those two things
Yeah.
go together. And so that's individual. And I think the third,
Mhm.
some of that is unintentional. Some of it is we're just
Mhm.
doing things because we were in survival mode or we were just trying to figure out
Yep.
the easiest way. That thing became something that became part of the program. It became something that
Mhm.
how we normally do it. And it hasn't worked. It doesn't work because it's not
Yeah.
producing the highest and best results that it could. And that book, Sins of the Fathers, that I wrote, talks about that
Yeah.
because the opening story is actually about my stepfather. He had
Okay.
never met his natural, or his biological father's natural father, but
Mhm.
yet he became exactly like him. And
Mm.
womanizer, an abuser,
Yeah.
lots of things you see in a man and an individual that
Mhm.
to say these are not great qualities. And the book talks about how things are passed down and around. And I
Mhm.
think it's such a powerful thing because when people step back and begin to look at it on the individual level, you can see
Mhm.
it play out in your family. You can see it play out in your business.
Yeah.
Wherever you look, there you are. So
Yeah.
a lot of times we look at different things and say, well, this is that, this is that. Well, everywhere you look, you are. You've impacted how that thing has been shaped.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes back to your point of showing up as your whole self in all of these iterations and
Yes.
helps you to see things much more clearly rather than I'm in my work lane or my congregation or whatever that is instead of
Right.
keeping them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it makes it, just to add on to that, tack on to it,
Mhm.
it makes it so that life is actually lived and enjoyed. So then you
Mhm.
build a life you don't need a quote vacation from. Not that you don't have
Yeah.
vacation and recreation, but I think most people need an escape from their real lives because they built a
Yeah.
life that they can't actually maintain. And I don't just mean
Yeah.
from a financial standpoint, they can't maintain constantly, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, versus
Mhm.
do all of these things and I do all of these things well, not perfect,
Yep.
but well, because
Yeah.
it was who
Yep.
I am.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And to the point, I tell my kids, I'm like, perfect doesn't exist. Perfect is
Right.
a myth. It is a unicorn. Like,
Exactly.
we're not gonna try and chase that.
Right.
So I
Right.
like that. Do these things well. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Not perfect and not
Yeah.
without error and not,
Yep.
not without messing up and making mistakes. I think one of the
Mhm.
most beautiful things about life is being able to make mistakes and say, this is recoverable. I think there's very few things that we cannot recover from. And I'd
Mhm.
even submit there's nothing that we can't recover from. And most
Mhm.
people live there, especially leaders who have achieved success. Sometimes they
Yep.
struggle with getting new success because their previous successes
Yeah.
become a prison for them.
Exactly.
It
Yep.
becomes a challenge.
Yeah. Yep. So let's switch gears a little bit and think about the ROI of wellness. And you
Mhm.
pioneered hashtag Fit Harvest after losing 95 pounds. Congratulations. That's
Thank
not
you.
a
Thank
small
you.
feat.
No.
And yeah, you're connecting your physical health to spiritual and leadership health. And I really love that because a lot of folks, I think we've been taught to keep some of these things private, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't belong at work or in these conversations outside of close friends or family. But
Mhm.
you've made it a public leadership value. So I'm wondering, Bishop, in your experience, how does your leaders' physical and mental health or discipline communicate a message that words alone won't to their team?
More is caught than taught.
Mhm.
More is caught than taught. People, and just look
Mm.
at even social media, for example. People are
Yep.
scrolling. Most people aren't reading
Mhm.
your captions. So people go through all this
Yep.
work to make these long captions. Most people aren't reading the captions. They'll see what's on the screen, and you've got a few seconds to grab them. More is
Yep.
caught than taught. And I think that principle,
Mhm.
it translates into every other sphere of life. So
Mhm.
I'd always been, like built like a middle linebacker, I call it. So I'd
Mhm.
always been like a
Mhm.
linebacker. I carried it well. And I remember one year going
Mhm.
to did my annual physical, and my
Mhm.
doctor said, Bishop, if you continue this path, you are one click away from, being pre-diabetic. And I said,
Mm.
you got to be joking. So,
Yeah.
I tried everything: slim, slow, slim,
Mhm.
fast, all the protein you
Mhm.
want, no protein, eat all the carbs you want, drink
Yep.
this bottle of juice, and in 48 hours,
Yeah.
Metabo life. I mean, you
Yeah.
name it.
To
Bold,
go.
exercise, Billy Blanks.
Mhm.
I tried it
Mhm.
all. And I
Mhm.
said, this is not working. We were on a 21-day, what's called Daniel fast. So basically fruits and vegetables. At the end of that, I literally prayed. I said, God, you got to give me a strategy. I
Yeah.
think sometimes in our lives are anomalies in so many ways and supernatural in so many ways. And sometimes we try to revert
Yep.
to regular and revert to natural. And so if my life had never really followed a natural course or statistical course, then why in the world would I be trying everything else? I literally prayed
Yeah.
for a strategy,
Yep.
got a strategy, and it worked. And I lost the first 75 pounds in 3 months. I didn't even realize I was losing
Wow.
them because we were being super casual that year, so in
Yeah.
jeans and stuff.
Yeah.
And I found out the day
Mhm.
that I had to go speak in the mountains at a leadership event, and
Mhm.
I need to wear a suit. So I go to put my suit pants on, suit coat on. The suit coat's hanging off of me. The suit
Yeah.
pants won't even stay up. Like, how do you? I'm basically
Wow.
sagging suit pants, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I look over to my assistant at the time, and I said, "Whose
Uh,
suit is this?" I said, "Y'all packed me the wrong suit." He said, "Sir, we
yeah.
are suing you. This is your suit." I said, "I'm telling you, look at this." I said,
Yeah,
"It's
like, look
hanging
at
off of me."
Yeah.
So we're on the way back down to
Yeah.
Denver. And I said, "Give me a scale." I say, "Something's going on." And I don't know. So,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "What's going on?" And I get on the scale and I said,
Yeah.
what is this? Like, I just didn't
Yeah.
even know. Then I lost another 20 pounds.
Mhm.
Now the total weight loss is about 120, 125 pounds. And
Wow.
now I've got the fitness in the gym and all of that, added all of that
Yeah.
later. But what really began to encourage me in such an amazing
Mhm.
way, I was doing it for my own health. But when I
Yep.
began to see other people tell their stories, listen,
Mhm.
I've lost 100 pounds. I've lost 130 pounds. I've lost this. I've lost that. Some
Yeah.
people did it very natural the way I did it. Some people said they
Mhm.
went and got a surgery. Some people did
Mhm.
whatever it was. But to me, the key was I began to watch people take their health into their own hands.
Yes.
And people across America and around the world would
Yeah.
send their before and after photos.
Aw.
They hear my story and say, I
Yep.
changed my whole life. Pastors, leaders, executives would say, this is
Yep.
me. And because of you, I'm doing this. I
Mhm.
never, what's interesting to this day, I've never preached a message on it. I've
Yeah.
never given a lesson
Yep.
on it other than a
Yep.
masterclass about how I
Yeah.
began to do it. People just watched, and them watching was their
Mhm.
inspiration. So I think as a
Yeah.
leader, to answer your question, people are
Mhm.
always catching more than you're teaching.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I wrote that down. More is caught than taught.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thinking about, again, the work that you do with finances. So, in
Mhm.
making money moves, you address financial order. On the show, we talk a lot about organizational headaches, and few things can cause more
Mm.
headaches than financial anxiety. And so, I'm wondering, Bishop, from your perspective and your expertise, how can
Mhm.
leaders better communicate about value and financial health, both for the company and for employees, in a way that empowers people rather than triggering fear?
Yes, such a good point. I wrote that first book, Making Money Moves,
Mhm.
Already Getting Your Financial Owner. I wrote that book
Yeah.
after having built a so by the time I was 21, I built Denver's largest Black-owned mortgage company. And then that
Wow.
entire industry collapsed over the
Yeah.
weekend. Like, it literally, the entire industry collapsed. I mean, I was on
Yeah.
Friday doing amazing. I was
Yeah.
an associate pastor at the time, in ministry simultaneously. And then
Yep.
on Monday, I was like, everything is on fire. Everything is on fire for everybody. Like, it wasn't just us, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yep.
in that, I remember saying, okay, how am I going to get through this? And so I began to just pay attention to the lessons that I learned. I
Mhm.
wrote that first book, Denver. We were in Denver. We had a blizzard. And I wrote that
Okay.
book in 3 days because we couldn't go anywhere. So I said, it
Wow.
was a good
Yeah.
time to write the
Yep.
book. So
Yep.
I just got
That's
there and sat at
amazing.
my kitchen
Yeah.
table and wrote
Yep.
that book.
Yep.
And so in that, a couple of the principles in the book with how we approach money and our relationship
Mhm.
with money. One,
Mhm.
seeing it as a resource, not a source. Because for many people, the
Mhm.
anxiety is that they see money, this is my source. And this is what's providing
Yeah.
versus a
Yep.
resource. And
Yep.
so when you see it as a resource, you're
Mhm.
always able to replenish it, always able to recreate it
Mm.
because
Yep.
often sources can't be. And so I think that's
Yep.
the first thing. So that's got to
Mhm.
be an empowerment organizationally and individually. These are our resources. So the goal is to not just be profitable for the sake of profitability. When we're profitable, now we can make sure that our employees are taken care of. Now we can make sure
Mhm.
our facilities are well maintained. Now we can make
Yep.
sure we're reaching more people. The money has to have a bigger motivator than just we want to be a
Mm.
profitable company. We want to hit
Yep.
these numbers for the quarter. We want to do that.
Yep.
Okay, you want them to help you hit your numbers. Well, they're trying to worry about their own numbers that they're trying to hit.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so it's got to have something greater. Number two that I would say
Mhm.
organizationally and individually is taking the time to teach. I began to, when I learned the principles and walked the principles out, I began to make sure that everyone connected to me, that these are principles that they knew and they could live out.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult, again, for people to coalesce around a mission and they're concerned about their own personal things. They're concerned about how they're going to do what they need to do. And so to me, it became important. Let's make sure the people around me are financially empowered. Same thing with health, are empowered with health. If I get them new, for example, I remember one year I started doing chiropractic. I never had an accident or anything like that had happened, but I started doing chiropractic work. And they gave me this printout that showed me that depending on your vertebra, that you can have obstructions that can have all these different issues in your body. And so it just was something that piqued my interest. So I literally brought the chiropractor into one of my staff meetings and said, now, all of what you taught me, teach everybody in here what you said. And then I want them to all get these tests so that they can see. Because sometimes there's a misalignment that's having global effects in your body.
Yeah.
And you think it's this, you think it's that, you think it's this, you're taking this pill for it, not knocking any of that. But sometimes it's just because something's out of alignment. I
Yeah.
use that to say, from a financial standpoint, if you help people get into financial alignment,
Yeah.
it takes the anxiety off of them, which means they are generally able to perform better because they're not stressed
Yeah.
out about money.
Exactly. I love that. I love that idea about alignment and that connection with the chiropractor. And you're right. Like it might not be these huge things or, I had a close family friend who's like, I need to get a new hip, but it was actually, they just needed to be aligned. They were just
Aligning. Oh,
walking, in a way that was
you
hurting that
slam
hip.
dunk. You just
Yeah.
alley that and slam dunk that one. Yes, that's it.
Exactly. So let's think about, and this is something I love this question when I was preparing and this, a little bit of time we've spent together. Your approachability is just off the charts. You're so warm and welcoming and engaging. And I can see why you're known as the people's bishop. So I'm wondering, for our titled leaders out there, sometimes, especially, the higher you go in the leadership ranks, the further you can be from your frontline staff.
Sure. Sure.
So, if you are someone who feels like you've kind of lost touch with your people, what are some practical communication touch points or suggestions you have so they can show that they're really there for their people that they lead?
My goodness, I love that. And you just said it. This is me all the time, going back to where we started the conversation. So if you were to see me at a restaurant, if you were to see me out jogging at the gym, this
Yep.
is me all the time. People always come up to me, they'll have one of my videos or something, and they'll turn their phone and they'll say, "Is this you?" And they'll point to it and
Yep.
whatever. I say, it's me. I will stop what I'm
Yep.
doing. I will engage with people. I will have a conversation with people. I will pray with people. I'll
Yep.
point people in the right direction. I am notorious for calling one of my team members on the spot and saying, "This is, so and so. Okay, you're in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so hey, Tiger. Okay, get them what they
Yeah.
need. Whatever it is."
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, to me, why have a platform if you're not going to connect with people?
Yep.
That being said, I think one of the simplest ways to connect with people is to just show some level of interest in them as an individual. Most
Yep.
people are never heard and never seen in ways that make any difference. And so they're
Yep.
just another number, they're just another this, they're just another that, they're just another this.
Yep.
And so what ends up happening is that they just don't feel engaged. They just don't feel connected. And I can't tell you the number of times I've just remembered something simple. And I'm a visual person. So names, I gotta be honest, not the best with names.
Yep.
But I'm visual, so I can remember your
Yeah.
face. I can remember your
Yep.
hair. I can remember how you had your hair. And so I said, just this past Sunday, I said to someone who came in, I said, "Have we talked before? Have we met before?" She says, "I've talked to you several times." Mr. said, "Well, you changed your hair then, because I remember your hair."
Yeah.
She says, "I did." She said, "I just changed it yesterday." And so this big smile comes on her face because she was seen. She was
Yep.
remembered. Someone in a seat of authority or power remembered who
Exactly.
she was and
Yep.
asked her about that. And so I think
Mhm.
for me, again, it's not perfection, but it's about just practical ways that you can engage with people who are on the front line that show them I'm seen, I'm heard, I matter. And it doesn't have to be that deep. It could be as simple
Yeah.
as you walking past their desk and seeing that they've got a dog in the photo. This is, old Dale
Yep.
Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence
Yep.
People. Seeing
Yep.
that they've got a dog in their photo and saying, "You know what? I've got a dog too. Tell me, tell me about your pup."
Yep.
"Oh, how did you know I had a dog?" Because,
Yeah.
that type
Yep.
of thing. And, the picture's sitting right there, so
Yeah.
it's like, but it's just so someone seeing me, someone's paying attention to me. And that makes all of the difference. And I think making those practical touch points. The other things that I always used to do too is I would go around and I'll use the church for example, and then I some other businesses that I own too. But I use church for example. I would go around on a Sunday after I've opened up the service, and I'd walk the entire campus, and I would go and greet everybody that was outside that never got to be in during the music. And so I would go greet the person in the parking lot that's waving, get people parked. I greet them, you good, check on them. I go greet security and then make sure security, everybody good, everybody good, you good. And they tell me one thing that I remember. And that one thing that I remember next time I saw him, I'd say, now, tell me, give me the update on what happened with this. Sir, you remember me? So you've got all these people and you remember that? Sure did. When I go on the stage, the singers, I'll give the singers a quick side hug because normally that's all the time I've got. And I'll say, how's the situation going with you, darling? Oh, it's good, sir. It's good. It's good. And people feel sick, and you can see it because the smile, the instantaneous response is joy. And when a leader can bring people joy, I know it may seem pretty insignificant, but the impact it has, you will get more out of people. Back to the analogy from Godfather, they will lay their lives down, philosophically speaking. They will lay their lives down to accomplish the mission or the vision because they know this person doesn't just want something from me. This person wants something for me. And there's a difference.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Huge difference, right? All the difference. Yeah. So let's look at the cost of silence. And this is, I love that you will tackle these taboo issues head on. And it's so important because I think silence on one topic grows legs into other topics. And so in many offices, there's this elephant in the room. We all see it. We don't talk about it. But from your perspective, in your experiences, what are like the tangible communication cost? Maybe it's lost productivity or trust that organizations pay when leaders choose to be polite over honest and engage in raw, important discussion.
You know what? The thing you ignore will become the thing you can't ignore. And so there's so many analogies I could use to it, but I think the point is made to say this. One of the best things a leader could do is to decide that I'm not going to let something become something when I could have killed it when it was something. And I said it that way on purpose because many times the thought is, I'm just going to leave that alone. I learned as a leader, you can't treat everything, but you have to treat the things that you already know have the propensity to become cancerous to your organization. So for example, a gossiper, somebody that's always gossiping, got to treat that. Well, people are grown. I don't want to get in people's business. I just want people to work. You're going to keep doing that. And what's going to happen, that gossip is going to create a toxic work environment so that your high performers who are probably quiet, because high performers aren't necessarily people who want to do a bunch of talking. They just want to get there and get their job done, get their work done. They're probably not going to really engage that. And it's going to create a toxic environment for them. And so that's something you've got to address. You can, and I like it versus, address the issues. I think you can still be polite and still at the same time also be very clear about this is our expectation. So the way we do it is we always do what we call values conversations. So everything has to be in alignment with values. So we always use language around, and this is in all of my companies, we, alignment with our values. Our values are thus and so. These actions aren't in alignment with the values. So one, we make the values the villain, not the individual. I don't like how you said this to Susie. Well, that's individualizing it. Well, that's making it personal. Instead, we make the values the villain. And again, they're not bad, but the villain in the sense of, we noticed that you were having a conversation that doesn't really align with our values. In fact, value number 5 says this and thus and so. Tell me, and then here's what you do. If you accuse people, they're always going to shut down and get defensive. So instead, we say, "Tell us about that. Tell me about that. Tell me about what that is." If someone's underperforming, again, we go back to the values. Our values state thus and so in value number 2. Do you think your performance is reflective of that value? Tell me about it. What you do is when you ask these open-ended questions, people often will check and correct themselves. Not everybody. And those are people who you have more chronic issues with. Those are probably people who are not going to last anyhow. because they're not self-aware. They're not trying to be self-corrective or to self-improve. So if you don't have those type of people, you'll never work in my environment anyhow, because those types of folks just generally are always going to have a problem everywhere they go. It's always the supervisor. It's always the manager. It's always the boss. It's always they're misunderstood. And so after a certain while, you begin to see everybody else is the problem but you. So maybe you should just go start your own thing. Exactly. And maybe you should just go start your own. So then that way you don't have any supervisors, you don't have any managers, you have nobody that can keep you bound or what have you. So for me, we always do it that way. And that addresses difficult conversations. Most people, and from my experience, will self-correct or self-correct. And the ones that don't are people who are not going to work at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense, right? Because when you're cultivating this culture, you want people who align with it, like we've said before, and who want to be there. And if not, a lot of times they recognize it's not a great fit for them either, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you have it that way, it opens it up so it's not so personal. And it doesn't feel like a personal attack. You're attacking me and you just don't like me and, whatever. But to me, it's the values are the values and the values are the values.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I was wondering about, you're a pastor to pastor, you coach executives, you've got to carry this invisible load of emotional labor. And I'm wondering with this, how have you found the best way to communicate your boundaries, going about when you need to say no or not right now, while still kind of maintaining your curiosity and all of these pursuits that you're doing so well?
Yeah, great question. I would not say that I've always done that well. I will say that, but in hindsight, I will say I did it extremely well. And so, well, where's the dichotomy at, and how you're having this bifurcation? Because in the moment, sometimes you don't necessarily think that it's, oh, I really need to do this different. But every stage and part of the life cycle of leadership requires a slightly different version of you. And so, I started my first business when I was 12. I got into ministry when I was 12 also. So I've had one button since I was an adolescent, which is I don't know what an off button is. I don't have one of those. Like, I'm like an iPhone. There is no off button. You just got to hold the on button for a long time and then we'll research. So there's no off button. And so that being said, for me, what I had to learn was I have to create systems that become boundaries so that I don't have to constantly be in a position to enforce a boundary. Let me give you an example. If everything is subject to, well, I'm just going to ask him and see, then it creates a scenario where it looks like this is discretionary. So then if you say yes to this one for that and no to that one for that, don't let them find out that that's what you did because, and you can say, you could tell them all day not to talk. Human beings are going to talk. That's what they do. In fact, telling them not to talk incentivizes them. It makes them want to go talk.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, I had to say, okay, I got to create boundaries that are built into my systems. I have to create boundaries that again are built into the values so that it doesn't become a discretionary thing. It becomes a value thing, a protocol thing. We created protocols around things that need to be that way. So for example, when my schedule is always very, very full, sun up to sundown. That's the way that it is. And sometimes people say, oh, I just need, can I just meet with Bishop? I just need to talk to him. Unfortunately, there's no way to do that. This is the way that you can, address that. He'd love to address your issue, love to address your concern. These are the ways to do that. That's it. So if a person sends me a DM later and says, well, I was trying to meet with you and your team told me, now I said, oh, I do understand, but they're taking good care of you and what have you. It's the values, it's the protocols. So I call it my VP protocol. Values, protocols, put those things together, they create boundaries. I used to just work all day. Like sun up to sundown with a lunch. Right? Which is typically a meeting. So that was work.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was fine at a certain stage of my life cycle of leadership. At this stage, it's not fine because there's so many other things that I like to do and enjoy. Like, again, physical fitness, being outside. That's something I enjoy. So again, back to the VP protocol, is that we created a system where I am absolutely done at a certain time of the day, every single day. That's the end of the discussion. If it didn't happen by that time of the day, it's not happening today. It's going to happen tomorrow. And obviously there's emergencies and things like that. But the last thing I'll say is I stopped making everything an emergency. When you've been an executive since you were a kid, sometimes everything can feel like, oh, I got to do something about this. What happens, again, is life cycle of leadership. You recognize that is not that big of a deal. That is not that urgent. It can wait until tomorrow. It can wait until next week. In fact, it can just maybe wait, period. Maybe we're just going to put this
Yeah.
on
Yep.
indefinite suspension, which means I'm never having any intentions on touching it, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that goes with those life cycle of leadership, because at certain
Yep.
stages, I think it was very important for me to do. And at new stages, it's just not.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that. And it's so neat that you can see like you've leveled up in these ways and it's
Right.
become a lot more sophisticated. And I think too, there's so much beauty in being able to look back and say, you know, the measuring stick I used for success at that season is not the one that's going to be the indicator of success right now.
Exactly. And I love what you said it. It was good. Like, for example, let's look at
Mm-hmm.
winter. In winter, you drive different, you dress different, the weather's
Yes.
different.
Yep.
That season requires a different
Yep.
approach to how you do what
Mm-hmm.
you do.
Yep.
You're the same you, different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Summertime,
Mm-hmm.
I have my saying, "Suns out, guns out." Well,
Yeah.
summertime,
Yeah.
I'm a
Yep.
very listen, I want to be done at
Uh-huh.
12 noon. I want
Yep.
to be outside. I want to be
Yeah,
enjoying the
exactly.
sun.
Enjoying it. Yep.
It's a different version of me. The same thing is true about leaders.
Yes.
In different
Yep.
seasons, there's a different version of you. You're still you,
Yep.
but a different version of how you approach what you do, a different version of you.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to raise up, you know, how you brought in values as kind of the scaffolding for healthy boundaries
Mhm.
and for a process. That's brilliant.
Right, right, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think too, putting it as a process, it takes
Yeah.
away the
Mhm.
pressure that sometimes comes feeling like I have to answer. I have to answer this and I have to do this.
Mhm.
Somebody sent me an email request for this. Somebody wants to do this. Nope, the values and the protocols are there.
Yep.
This is what I live by.
Yes,
There's no other
exactly.
option. There's nothing discretionary
Yeah.
about it. And I think as much as a leader can systematize, systems remove
Mhm.
stress.
Yep, exactly. All right. So, I have two final questions
All
for
right.
you and
These
these
have been
are.
amazing questions. You're amazing at this.
Thank
Seriously.
you. This is where I end all episodes of the Communicative Leader. And these two questions, they go hand in hand. So the first part is, you know, if you have a communication or leadership, like a tip, a challenge, or an advice for our titled leaders, our managers, directors, CEOs. And then the second part is, you know, what is that tip, challenge, or advice for employees across all levels, across all industries?
Oh, I love it. Let's start with employees, all levels, all
Mm-hmm.
industries. I think one, recognize that
Mm-hmm.
your work is worthwhile. And even if it's not rewarded or seen by your company,
Mm-hmm.
managers, etc., is you are sowing, you're going to reap that. Some may call it karma. I call it reaping what you sow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scriptural principle. And so just because they didn't clap for you over here doesn't mean they won't clap
Mm-hmm.
for you over here. You reap what you sow, not necessarily where you sowed it. So my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
anyone that, the couple of jobs that I did have, like at
Mhm.
12 and
Mhm.
16, because
Yeah.
most of the time I've been the executive, but in any of those jobs, anything that I've ever done for anyone,
Mhm.
they will always tell you he does it with excellence. Whether I'm
Mhm.
getting big bucks or no bucks, he
Yep.
does it with, because that's just who I am. So I can't
Yep.
half do it. And I think to an
Yep.
employee, when we live in a culture where mediocrity is almost celebrated, doing the
Yep.
least that you can
Mhm.
is almost like, oh, that's good. You
Yep.
have to ask yourself, do I want to reap this? Because what if one day you're one of these title
Mhm.
leaders, you're one of these executives, you're one of these people, you got
Mhm.
people working for you. Would you want to reap your work ethic and
Mhm.
people who work for you? And if
Yep.
that answer is no,
Mhm.
I always encourage people, you got to do different. And I don't just say that sitting in the
Yeah.
executive seat. I say that
Yep.
because I've sat in the seat where, I needed to produce for
Mhm.
someone else. Two executives, leaders, title leaders. I love how you said that.
Mhm.
I say this, recognize that the greatest contributions that you will make are not just fiscal or financial, they're in the lives
Mhm.
of people that you are
Mhm.
shaping them. You are literally giving people silent structures for success,
Mm.
because more is caught than taught. Them
Yep.
watching shows them this is what success looks like. This is what leadership looks like.
Mhm.
This is what productivity looks like. And I say to those that are title leaders to recognize that, just that you're a title
Mhm.
leader. And as a
Yep.
leader, if you're going to call the shots, that's what that also means. You take the shots. As a
Yeah.
leader, what does that mean? Everybody's
Mhm.
watching you, which doesn't mean that you need to be perfect. It just means
Mhm.
that when you realize you could have done it better, you say, you
Yeah.
know what? That was my mistake. That was my error. We could have done that
Yep.
better. You don't have to be perfect. You've already got the position. You've already got the place. Instead, what you have to do is be progressive and productive.
So powerful. My goodness, Bishop. I have so many notes. So
I
this has
love that.
been, just an absolute delight and perhaps more importantly, so insightful. And you left us with so many thoughtful, pragmatic tips. And it's meant so much to me. And I know it'll do the same for our listeners.
Thank you so much. But listen, thank you for having me. You've asked amazing questions. Let me just say this to you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people see people on camera, on screen doing podcasts, and go, oh, that's so easy. You make it look easy. You're very good at this. And only eternity will be able to tell the lives that you positively impacted, because it doesn't show up in the data, it doesn't show up in the comments, it doesn't show up in the likes, it doesn't show up in the shares. I've discovered that more people look for like, more people are paying attention than they actually indicate. And what you're doing is absolutely necessary. It's absolutely needed. So I say to you, keep going.
Thank you. That
My
means the
pleasure.
world.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.